War films, the ultimate dad movie genre. Ask your dad about Saving Private Ryan and just see how long he starts rambling on for. They've really been a staple genre for movies forever. From Paths of Glory to Tropic Thunder, all different genres and takes on war have seemed to be explored. And the thing about it is, they kind of keep working. That doesn't mean they're all good or all hits, but more oftentimes than not, a war film seems to come out every year and make some noise. Even from before I was into movies, back when I was a little dweeb complaining about a Pokemon gym battle I lost, I would know the popular war films. I knew what Saving Private Ryan was. American Sniper, when I was a little more grown, was a huge box office and Oscar success, and I definitely remember that being a thing even though I never saw it. And still haven't seen it. Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, Come and See, The Thin Red Line, Dunkirk, Hacksaw Ridge, Zero Dark 30, 1917, All Quiet on the Western Front, Civil War. Fucking Purple Hearts was a hit on Netflix. They are routinely in the forefront of a lot of movie culture, and they've been embraced pretty much wholeheartedly. I mean, if we break up all movies into little subgenres, how many Oscar nominations or wins do you think the war movie genre would have? I mean, Saving Private Ryan alone got 11 nominations, which, fun fact, that is 2 less than Amelia Perez. Ooh, zinger. That's one more for you all out there. Okay, no more. But with so many of these movies making a lot of money, being big awards players, I mean, it makes sense that Hollywood continues to churn these out. However, with a topic as charged as war, and I know I'm being very broad when I say that, I do think people's perception of these movies have changed or is changing. Maybe it's simply because I'm getting older. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's just because of social media. Maybe it's a combination of all three. But I do think more people are becoming a little more outwardly conflicted on these kinds of movies. And that conflict can be seen in 2 different ways. One is that I see a lot of the same sentiment for so many war films, including from myself, as impressive, but not actually engaging. The most technically impressive Call of Duty campaign mission yet. There are some people who just can't connect to this, not too dissimilar from those who aren't huge fans of long, extended, sprawling action films. To them, there's only so many kicks and punches before they just stop caring, and I think that same reasoning goes into these war films. But that's really not a big deal. People have different tastes. I really don't care about that. Like any genre, some work, some don't. But 2, and the biggest change that I've seen, is on some moral or political level. And listen, people, I know hearing these things can be exhausting, okay, but with a topic like war, people's politics and moral values will come into play, okay? We're not robots, we're human beings. And it's not even just now. We've seen that happen even years ago. I mean, I do remember Zero Dark 30 started getting that discourse that year. I used to think American Sniper was some universally beloved movie, and now I don't even know. I see a lot of the opposite. And sure, most of it is from people online, but I guess my point is that these kind of movie discourse is getting louder. Sure, middle-aged dads who barely know the existence of social media probably isn't thinking of that, but people are more aware of the complication of these things as time has gone on. Like, imagine making a movie set during the Iraq War. Like, that's a pretty complicated thing to portray. Which brings us to Warfare. It follows a platoon of soldiers during the Iraq War set in real time. 95 straight minutes of following this group and what unfolds there. I had a chance to see this a few weeks ago, and I'm slightly positive on this movie. And honestly, this is less so a movie and more so a sensory experience. I don't know about you, but I don't jump in movies. Like in horror movies, the jump scare, even if it's really well done, I just don't really move. In this movie, I was jumping like every 10 minutes. It just shakes me up whenever an explosion or gunshot rings through my eardrums, way more than someone peeking around the corner that I didn't know was there. And Warfare is extremely effective at throwing you right into the action and then forcing you to just sit in it. It is pretty claustrophobic. It feels very contained, which is an interesting opposition to these big, sprawling, war epic action films. It basically all takes place in one little street block. And it's interesting because this movie isn't concerned with what other movies are. It does not try to have the normal, compelling story arc. It is certainly not concerned with really any major character development. Its storytelling choice is similar to a documentary, not with the talking head interviews, but almost just saying this is a real life platoon and we're just gonna follow them and we're gonna show you everything. And that will work for a lot of people. and it won't for a lot of others. Because it can hit that point for people where I can see them choose to not be as fully invested. Long, extended scenes of constant gunfire, men screaming in pain, overhead shots of air support looking down, and it's that for an hour and a half, which will certainly distance some people from being invested. But the one thing it does have is I think you do believe the brotherhood that these people have. The very first scene of the movie does establish that in a pretty funny way, and some of the casual conversations that they have before the action takes place do further emphasize that. You combine that with very good performances from the main actors, and I think you're bought in. And as a close-knit group going through something like war, that will certainly shake up the group as gunfire and death continue to collapse around them. All of a sudden, your leader is shaken to their core and can't lead properly, but when you're in a life or death situation, I mean, you have to do something. And that is what I happen to like about this film the most. The psychological disorientation of the whole group and how everything can change in an instant is something that Warfare does very well, which is something you certainly want considering, as mentioned, there really is no character development at all. The sound design in particular is phenomenal, not just because it's loud gunshots, but the mixing is pretty incredible. But as I've already seen, people are asking, what is this movie trying to say? It's directed by a real-life Iraq War veteran, Ray Mendoza, and Alex Garland, who did Civil War previously. What is the overarching point that this movie is trying to drive home to audiences? And my answer to that is this movie is basically confirmation bias, because whatever you want to see or whatever you think this movie is, it is. I'll explain. I have already seen from either people I follow or at the very least know of this movie range from half a star to 5 stars, because some people see this as a US military propaganda piece on an unpopular war that glorifies the senseless killing and invasion of others, while other people look at this as an anti-war film that shakes up the lives and destroys the lives of everyone who participates. And as I said, I think this movie will confirm your bias if you come into this movie with any particular mindset. So I cannot and will not speak for you on what this movie means. Your interpretation of the movie is your own interpretation. All I can tell you is what I see, because I don't see this as a fluff piece on the might of the US military. I don't see this as a glorification of war at all. Here's what I see. I see a couple things. I see some level of closure for Ray Mendoza, but I see it as a tribute on how the brutalities and horrors that these men faced was not worth the cause of why they were sent there in the first place. Because as you're seeing this destruction and killing on what feels like a lot of boys, or very least young men, you're left thinking like this is going to mess up everyone's life. Kit Connor's character in particular, who seems to have that kind of young pup energy here, is fully shaken to his core after the first encounter. And you wonder, how in the world was this worth it? And not just on the US side, without spoiling anything, not that you can really spoil a movie like this, but there's one scene where the US soldiers leave a certain area, and the family that was there, that was hiding in cover, the dad comes out and he tells his kids, it's okay, they're gone, and it's just left with a fully destroyed home with smoke everywhere. The tagline of this movie is everything is based on memory, and I think it's easy to tell that once you see the whole movie. From the opening scene of camaraderie to the ending, where they do show some behind the scenes footage, some of which do include the actual real men in this situation. And while some will look at that a different way, I think that is Ray Mendoza almost just acknowledging that how everyone was put in an awful, awful situation. But look, this is still a movie at the end of the day, and it does take on the perspective of the US soldiers, and it will obviously frame the men shooting at them as enemies, and that will rub people the wrong way. Some will look at that BTS footage as a big hoorah and a big congratulations on those men. Again, think what you want to think. Frankly, I am too old to go through this discourse on the regular. I'm at that point where I wake up and a new body part of mine is hurting. Ultimately, I do recommend this movie. At the very least, it is something to talk about and is very impressively well made. I absolutely have some gripes with it as a narrative feature that don't all work for me, but I'll also be honest, since I saw this so long ago, I haven't really stopped thinking about it since. Go out and see it, make up your own mind about it. Ultimately, discussion is good for movies. Warfare, 3.5 stars. I'm sure the comments on this will be normal, hopefully, right?